Good afternoon and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court and a bunch of issues. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and I have another overseas guest all the way from Ireland. Her name is Aoife Griffin, and she has a lot to say as a mom. And she also wrote a book called Stop, Breathe, and Enjoy. And that was about living with autism and ADHD and anxiety, and about therapies that were tried that worked and others that didn't, with the idea of giving hope to families. And she had gotten involved with parental alienation by watching a friend of hers post about it on social media. And she had really never heard of it and reached out. And the more she talked to this person, we all get horrified and just, it's a horrible thing parental alienation is. And she learned a lot from it. And through her work, which I'm going to let her talk about, she is a trained hypnotist. And she gives support to moms and dads for deep healing. And she goes down to the root cause of anxiety and building up self-esteem. So I'm going to have Aoife come on and talk about everything she's done. Welcome.
Hi, Marianne. Thank you very much for having me on today. Where we begin? From a stress and anxiety point of view, I would have suffered myself in the past with it. And through my own battles and my own struggles, I got very deep into desperately low health with a heart condition and weight loss and an awful situation with my own health. And I went in search of anybody to cure me, fix me. I think we all do that when we're feeling stressed and anxious. You just want anybody and anything to fix us. And through that, I discovered things like hypnotism and quantum flow and different things that really worked for me. And I then made it my kind of mission or life's work to make sure that no other parent ever goes as low as I do. And then I wrote the book to help other special needs moms like myself, because my eldest, I have 4 children. My eldest has anxiety, autism, ADHD. He had epilepsy, he had licorice, all sorts of issues. And obviously you learn a lot about that. And at the time, he's 15 now, but when he began his journey at 4 in Ireland, I know over there you have much better supports, but in Ireland, there was next to nothing. There wasn't even an autism team at the time. There was very little support for us as parents. So we tried again, everything you could think of, from random healers to neurofeedback to the more traditional therapies too. We tried talk therapies, we tried everything. So that's how in the book I go through the good, the bad and the ugly of therapy because we literally tried everything. And then with regards to what we're coming on today about the parent alienation side of things, I am having great time working with these lovely, amazing parents who are at rock bottom, and they all keep telling me you're broken. I keep saying none of us are broken. We just need time to rebuild and to get back to who we were before they went through the most horrific trauma that any parent could ever imagine going through. I can't imagine anything worse than never knowing when you're going to see your child again. Like, as a mom, like when you first are handed your baby in a hospital, you think that this is it from now until the day you die. You are going to be with them, you are going to support them, you are going to nurture them, you are going to nourish them, you are going to be there in the good times and the bad time, protect them no matter what. And then when obviously nobody is ever blameless. People divorce, separate for a whole host of reasons, and then for that to be the reason then that your own child is turned against you because you fall out of love with somebody, or you're abused, or you leave for a whole host of reasons, that the person that you loved and had this child with could then turn on you to such an extent to turn your own child against you. I just can't think of a worse pain than that. And that was one of the reasons I got drawn into to help and support these amazing, amazing people that I'm working with.
And how long have you been working with people?
Not long, only the last few months. Okay. Not long at all.
So then
when I've been working with other parents, special needs parents, for not longer, but specifically with parent alienation, only in the last 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, that's
in the last few months.
Okay. When did you write Stop, Breathe, and Enjoy?
Oh, that was last year. That was my COVID project.
Oh wow.
That kept me sane. That kept me sane during COVID, was writing that. It was like literally what kept us going in the house. You know yourself, we all had to find things to do. Right. And I had been thinking about it for a long, long time. And I'd been doing bits and pieces, and I had different blog posts and kind of built on it from there. Because I wanted to find an easy, affordable way to get as much information to parents as possible. And writing a book is a very quick way to help people.
Right.
And that's it. Like, especially COVID, sure, everyone has lost their jobs, and it's a lot harder to access therapy. And it's all great that we have Zoom and things now, but other people just really like the in-person thing that we just can't do at the moment. So a book was a good way of getting to reach more people. And
where can people find your book?
Oh, it's on Amazon.
Amazon. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Okay. And tell me more about this quantum flow and
the rapid transformation therapy. Yeah.
Yes.
So there's two. I treat clients, patients, whatever you want to call them, parents. Although I do work with children as well. With a two-prong approach. So we use rapid transformational therapy, which was created by Marissa Peer. She's like Britain's top therapist. Although she does do an awful lot of work in the States as well. She used to do a lot of work with Jane Fonda and got into it through that. Mm-hmm. But so a lot of your listeners may have heard of her before. So it's basically you don't waste time. You go literally to the root cause of an issue. So say, for example, a lot of the parents that I'm working with parent alienation, it's really around anxiety, self-esteem, rebuilding somebody from the ground up. But you go to the beginning. And a lot of us, when we suffer from trauma and things like that, we think it's only when the trauma happened as an adult that it all kicked off. But 9 times out of 10, it began in childhood, which is the other reason I'm so worried about the children involved in these families. Because when I go back with a parent, it goes back to, I honestly cannot remember a person that didn't go back straight to a childhood issue where they first felt anxiety, first felt they didn't belong, first felt that they didn't feel worthy. Because we are all born as babies with the belief that we are worthy, we are lovable, and we are enough. And then somewhere along the way, we lose that innate belief, and we get other people's opinions matter more, other people's voices matter more, circumstances happen, and we suddenly take on their beliefs. And it's the same with any of the issues. You know, it always goes back to something really minor. It doesn't have to be a major trauma. It can be something so small as, you know, a teacher correcting you, a mom saying to you, you can't leave the dinner plate until you finish your dinner. And you think as a mom, you're going, okay, I'm trying to get them to eat, but they're going, oh my God, I feel full. And then they end up with the food issue because they're like, I can never leave, anything on my plate. And that belief goes in. And then you find a lot of people are dealing with weight issues. It's something as simple as that it goes back to. So the rapid transformation therapy we go back to the root cause, and we do it like a pattern, like a daisy chain. So you kind of go to 2 or 3 different events where you can go, every time I felt anxious, this is what happened. Or every time somebody said this, it made me feel that. And you guide the person through. So they're literally hearing they're coming to their own conclusions. You're like a guide to them. Then what we do is we release it in a very, very gentle way through a visualization form of exercise. And then the last part, they call it either the transformation. They use the word cure as well when we're trained, and I don't like the word cure. But it's basically that, the retrain the brain part. A lot of people will think of hypnosis and they go, oh, I did that for giving up smoking years ago. And it's that exact thing, where you're listening to something I record for 21 days, where you tell me, okay, at the moment I feel really anxious. I want to feel calm. I want to be able to go into court and speak without shaking. I want to be able to go to the door to collect my child, knowing that they could reject me, but being strong enough to go, okay, I'm turning up, I'm here, I love you, and being able to be calm and confident rather than turning up a nervous wreck already feeling the rejection before you even get there. Because you know yourself, like, people pick up on your energy. Kids pick up on energy more than anyone else. Kids and dogs, they're amazing for picking up on people's energies.
Yes, they are.
So when you are turning up to an appointment with your child, or to a court, or to a solicitor, and you're already defeated before you even get there, they're going to know that. So part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to say, let's slowly but surely rebuild that confidence, rebuild your self-esteem, rebuild that self-worth that you were born with. So I'm literally bringing you back to where you began, as opposed to something new and magical. We're literally going back to the beginning. And then with the quantum flow stuff, every trauma that occurs for you occurs also in your body. We hold our trauma in our body and our nervous system. If you've ever watched a nature documentary, and you will see any animal, let's say a cat and dog chase, you know, a gazelle being chased by a lion in the savannah, as soon as the danger passes and the animal is safe, they stretch, they shake, they let the stress out, and they move on. Us as humans, we go and we brace and we hold it. And nearly at this stage, we're holding it like a badge of honor. Because I don't know about you, but in schoolyards and workplaces all over Ireland, people are going, oh my God, I'm so stressed. I'm so tired. I'm so anxious. COVID, lockdown. And literally it's like this badge of honor that I haven't slept more than you haven't. I'm more stressed than you are. And we literally sit there and compare notes about how awful things are, and getting ourselves more anxious and more stressed. So the sooner we can release the stress to the event, the healthier we will all be. So the combination that I use is we'd start with the hypnosis and release it from the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind runs 95% of your day. And it's all great for the things like breathing without thinking and our digestive system. But when it's really controlling every single thought we have, it's less fun, you know, for all of us, because then we're not controlling really. We're really being, we're literally like 8-year-old children most of the time, being ran by some belief that we, you know, we weren't worthy way back when. So we do the hypnosis first, and then we do a combination of the quantum flow and other supports, where we're literally getting the body out of its state of survival and coming back to thrive. Because most of us are all stuck in that, you know, that nervous energy and that survival mode, and just literally going from one crisis to the next. And especially with parent alienation, it's literally like post-traumatic stress. Every time you see an ad on the TV where somebody's hugging their child, you see at the school gate, you're driving past a school, you're in a shopping mall, you're in anywhere that there's family, it's literally like a whole jolt to your nervous system going, this is what I'm missing. This is what, and every time you go and you're rejected by your child, or you're back in court, it's like somebody's beating you with a stick over and over and over, but there's no stick in their hands. It's literally the emotional trauma over and over and over. And trying to release even some of that from the body has to be good for you.
Now, do you see grandparents? Do you get many grandparents coming to you for?
I've only had one grandparent, but yes, it is definitely a multi-generational problem. I would have no problem seeing anybody. I've had one grandmother reach out, but no, there's definitely, it's sure, parent alienation affects whole families, cousins, aunties, uncles, grandparents. Everybody is wiped out of a child's life, and it's heartbreaking.
Right. And the kids can't get that time back, and the parents can't get that time back, and you know, I have seen parents that have been divorced been able to co-parent maturely. And it's rare, but I know of at least 4 families that are able to behave and act mature, and their kids maybe bouncing back and forth from house to house. But you know, like mine, like we were co-parenting, and they were bouncing back from house to house, but they were okay with that. If they forgot something, I would, yeah. And we were in the same city. So I would, if they forgot a book or whatever, I would just run it up there and leave it in the mailbox, you know. but I don't know why some parents have to be so volatile. And I hate to use the term narcissistic,
Yeah.
because I know we're not supposed to really use that term, but a lot of people are.
Yes. It's a hard term to avoid these days. It seems to be at the root of a lot of things.
Because I had Dr. Mark Roseman on, and he said this family court system affects 6 future generations coming down the line. So we're going to have a lot of problems, and we're going to have more divorces happening.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there's not going to be an end to it. And I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, I don't know your country's laws.
We only got divorced not that long ago over here. Like, so for a long time, people were stuck in really, really unhappy marriages. My own parents are divorced, and we were the first. I'm from a small enough town in just not far from Dublin Airport, and my parents divorced. Oh, it's 20 years ago this year, and they were the first family on the road to be divorced. Like, you were like totally a pariah nearly, you know, like everybody looked to go, oh, your mum and dad, and oh, Janie Mac. And at the time, my dad was actually working away, so it wasn't that big a thing that, you know, we weren't seeing him all the time. He kind of came over and back and saw us, but it was more the whole thing of the stigma that you were the first one to be divorced, and that it took a massive toll on myself and my sisters. My parents now are both, my dad is remarried and has another daughter. My mum is with a lovely, lovely man, and they're both incredibly happy, to the point where last year, for my mum's partner's birthday, my dad remarried a German lady and they live in Germany, and my mum's partner had always wanted to go to Berlin. So she went to Berlin. They met up with my dad, his wife. They had them to her house. They had them over for afternoon tea. It was all so lovely and civilized. And I was like, that's how it should be. That you get to a point where you can be civil, because they still have 3 kids. We all had, you know, weddings that they had to attend. My own wedding was the first one that they had to attend. I was very stressful. My 2 sisters who came after me getting married had it way easier than I had, because, you know, the precedent was set, you know, everybody's coming, we're all getting along, and, you know, this is how it's going to be. And not everybody knows you're raw after a separation or a divorce, but that doesn't mean that has to filter down to the kids and that it has to be hell on earth. Like, the idea is that you put your children first. And obviously, with regards to parent alienation, one of the parents aren't able to be mature, aren't able to put their own needs aside and their own pain and their own trauma aside for their children. Because if you were able to do that, parent alienation wouldn't exist. It just wouldn't, because we would all find a way to put our children's needs ahead of our own. That's the real issue, is that, be it narcissism, be it personality disorders, be it illness, be it addiction, be it, who knows, there's a whole host of possibilities for why a person would use their own child against their ex as a weapon, as a tool of mass destruction nearly. It's just incomprehensible to you or I, who don't have that mindset.
Right. Right. Because it's like, well, hey, you know, I'm laid back, and, you know, if the grandparent wanted to take the kids to the beach or whatever, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that's fine. You know, I would never withhold them from the grandparent. And in my case, things were going well until the third party entered the picture, and
Right.
she did not have children of her own. So all this started. Yes. So I just couldn't believe that was happening. You sit back and you're like, wait a minute, what is going on? I mean, do you have parents coming to you that ask you, is this really happening? I mean, is this happening with the kids?
Absolutely. And you also have people who are coming and they just go, how in the name of God did I end up here? Like, everything seemed to be going okay, and yet here we are. And like, it's like a total shock, because they're like, everything seemed to be fine, and then suddenly, bang, I'm gone. a lot of the parents have come, they were like, I dropped my child back, I kissed them goodbye, I was supposed to see them the following week. Next thing I know, there's a court order saying I can't see them. Next thing I know, I've been accused of hitting my child or abusing my child or hurting my child. Or then there's other people who were literally driven out of their own home, you know, because like that, there was another party in the wings and they decided, right, I'm done with you. So I'm going to make your life as horrible as possible so that I can move on with, you know, the next model, or not always younger or whatever, but, you know, there's always, with parent alienation, from what I have come in contact with a lot of the parents, it seems to be very much premeditated. That nobody just decided on a particular morning to wake up and go, do you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to stop you seeing your children. I'm going to start turning my kids against you. It seems to be that it builds up and builds up and builds up over time, and they have all their ducks in a row. They have gotten whatever they wanted out of the relationship. They have the car or the house or the holidays that they had wanted, or they had got their children that they wanted. They'd gotten themselves well set up with the person that they knew that they could manipulate. And I know it sounds horrible to say, but from my experience, from the many parents I've spoken to in the last little while, it nearly is like they knew from the beginning what they were doing, which is why, and I know you said about not using the word narcissist, but it's like they knew from day one, I can mold this person to do what I want them to do for as long as I want them to do it. And when I am done, they're disposable. And it's a horrible, horrible way for somebody to be left, because the other person, they fell in love. Mm-hmm. They fell hook, line, and sinker for this person. They believed their love was reciprocated. They had children with them. They built a life with them. They bought homes with them. And for that to all fall away, the shock and the trauma that they are left with is it's just unbearable. Mm. And that's why this whole thing of broken heart syndrome has come up, because literally their hearts are broken. They are literally sitting there with real life chest pains. Now, I know for myself, because I had a stress related heart condition, that you literally, your heart, stress really, really will break your heart. That literally, you are literally like you're having a heart attack. You have the chest pain, you have the tachycardia, you have the breathlessness, you have the pain. You literally feel like you cannot move. People have fainted on the floors. They've had to have ambulances called for some of the parents that I've been speaking to. Like, this is real. It's not made up. This is real life happening to real people behind closed doors. And this is the problem, I think, especially in Ireland. I think it may be more spoken about thanks to the wonderful people like yourself who are bringing parent alienation out to the world and explaining it and getting to know. Over here, it's so unknown unless you are directly affected or know somebody close to you. And I think that's a massive problem, because all over the place, it could happen to any of us.
Right.
Like, you don't know. Like, none of these people I've spoken to went, God, you know what? Parent alienation. See that in my future. Tarot lady told me now, when I'm 20 years into my marriage, it's all going to come from under. Nobody knew, because it's not talked about. It's not even existed. It's like 1 minute you're at the schoolyard collecting your kids. The next minute, there's another mom in the place of the dad is suddenly there, or the granny that used to come is now wiped out of these children's lives. And the children are literally standing there going, we're not allowed to talk about this. And then, I don't know about over in the States, but over here with the in-camera rule, parents are gagged.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. Right. Their voices are stolen. They can't talk about what they're through. If they defend themselves, they're in breach, of course, and they get hauled back in. But yes, people can draw their own conclusions. Mm-hmm. They can turn around and they'll go, because I don't know about in the States, but over here it's like the court of public opinion. Suddenly, okay, they go, there's no smoke, no fire.
Right.
Mary, Jack, Billy, Jill, must be something if they can't see their kids anymore.
Yes, and it's even embarrassing because, you've got, over here we call them, false allegations, a silver bullet, indications of emotional child abuse or whatever they come up with. And once they say that in front of a judge, you've lost your kids.
Yeah.
That's how it's working over here. And the judge goes immediately with whatever, and you guys have CAF-CAS, we have CPS. So the judge immediately just goes with the lead of the CPS caseworker.
Right.
And these people aren't even properly trained.
That's a massive issue, that there's no training, and judges aren't trained, and solicitors aren't trained, and the people who are making these life-changing, life-altering decisions for a family and a child's future in their hands aren't even trained. It's just beyond me how that is even allowed to happen in this day and age, where people who know nothing about anything can suddenly go, actually, do you know what? You're not allowed to see your child anymore because she said this or he said that. So we're just going to believe them because they've turned up, and look at them, they're in the smarter suit. Or right. They're in, they're so calm and they're so collected, and you're so emotional. So he must be right. You are mad, or you are losing your mind. And we did it. I'm doing a course for professionals around parent alienation. And that was one of the things they were talking about, is the people, the victims of parent alienation have the 4 A's. So they turn up in court or with the professionals where they are angry, they're anxious, they're agitated, and they're afraid. And then the others on the other side, they are the 3 C's. I think it's something like calm, collected, composed. Like they have it all down. They have their speech ready. They have the big solicitor. They know exactly what they're doing beforehand because they've had time to prepare, and they are not emotional because they have known that this was coming for years and they have been leading to this point. Where the other is like an emotional mess because they are so distraught that they loved this child, they loved their pet, this person, and it's all gone in a heartbeat.
That's very interesting. You should say that. Because when I was going into court and I said to my lawyer, what if I cry? He says, well, you're allowed to cry. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I should do that.
It's funny that you say that, because a mom last week when we were talking about, she was like, but if I go in then and I look calm, and like Aoife does her work and she does whatever, and we're all suddenly calm, and then I look like I'm the calm one. And what if he goes in and looks, or she goes in and suddenly, I'm calm. So does that mean that I'm the perpetrator? And it's suddenly then in their head, they're like, oh my God, I can't get calm now either. And it's like, there's no way out. Mm-hmm. And you're just, like the heartbreak of thinking there's literally no hope. And I hate the thoughts of parents thinking that there's no hope. That to me is just, what's the point if there's no hope? That we have to find a way to give parents hope. We have to try and rebuild them and help them get back to a place where they believe in themselves and they believe that they deserve better, and that they can't necessarily control their spouse or their ex-spouse, and they can't control their kids' behavior at the moment. The only thing they can control is themselves and how they respond, and rather than react in a court situation, or when the psychologist is doing their review, or there's different obviously professionals there, or if they're having a supervised visit, an access visit with their child, that they are able to hold themselves together to do the best account of themselves while they're being watched. Because yourself, if you are being watched by anybody, you're on edge instantly. You're like, oh my God, am I doing this right? And like, I know for myself as a parent with special needs, when you hear the word social worker, and we used to have we had a social worker come to us, and they used to come to our house, and like suddenly the house had to be spotless. You had to all be in your best clothes. You're like, these people have the power to take your children away. That fear is unnatural.
Oh, exactly. I can relate to that. I had a caseworker who just came through the door and said, if you're indicated on these emotional abuse charges, you will lose your job as a registered nurse.
Oh my God.
And what I should have done, because how you backtrack and say, I should have said, you need to leave. I'm going to call my lawyer.
Yeah.
So
hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't
it? Right. Because it's like what she put me through for 2.5 hours of literally screaming at me. Can you believe that went on for 2.5?
Oh my God.
And then she came back 2 days later and did the same thing. And had I known better, that's why I have these podcasts, so people can learn from you and other people, and don't let them in your house, and go call your lawyer. And the thing is, it's just a terrible thing to put the kids through, and the kids
Yes.
don't understand this is even happening. Like they didn't know a caseworker was screaming at their parent.
Of course not.
Right. So I
Because if
mean,
you
like,
say that to the child, then you're traumatizing the child, and you can't, because then you can be in trouble for saying, oh well, you know, the social worker said this to mommy, or this happened to that, and you can't even say that.
and the thing is, with like a non-custodial parent, and I'm sure you have non-custodial
Yeah,
parents over there, right?
of course.
So
Yeah.
that parent is walking on eggshells at all times,
Yes.
even with the child, because I'm like, yeah, my boys were good. I mean, I didn't have to yell at them to clean their room or mow the lawn. They were really easygoing kids, thank God. But yet it was like I was afraid to reprimand if that should come up.
If you even turned around and said you didn't eat your vegetables today, you'd be in fear.
Mm-hmm.
In case
Mm-hmm.
they went back and they said, well, she tried to force me food, she tried to do this to me, and it's that little nagging voice, that little seed of doubt that's in your head all the time. You're double checking everything you do. You're trying to second guess yourself. That in itself is so traumatic for a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Like that in itself is literally trauma in your body, and you're literally holding that feeling of being on eggshells, and that is so detrimental to our health. So detrimental to our health. That literally will give you stomach ulcers, that comes into your heart conditions, that comes into your headaches. You can't sleep, and you know yourself, like not being able to sleep because you're worrying. You can't think straight then during the day, and you're lying awake at night thinking, if I'd said that, did I do that, did I watch that, what did I say to them, oh my god, did I send them back in the wrong clothes? One parent told me that they were in trouble for putting the child's vest on back to front after a swimming lesson. And they got a solicitor's letter because they said the child was traumatized because the vest went on back to front. Can you imagine a vest? I was like, if I was in trouble every time I put on odd socks or a vest, like I'd never leave court. Like it and that pressure, it's like literally living in a pressure cooker for parents, where you literally never know when you're going to explode or collapse, because you're running on empty. I know yourself, Virginia, sleep deprivation is a form of torture. And any of the parents, nobody sleeps. And I remember one parent I was working with recently, and I'd done the hypnosis with them, and all the parents go home with a hypnosis recording, the retrain your brain bit, and it's very, very relaxing. I might not sound it at the moment, but when I do my hypnosis voice, I have a very calming voice. Not when I'm all irate and passionate, but when I'm doing my recordings, it's very relaxing. And she messaged me 2 days after. She went, Aoife, I have slept for the first time in years. And that, even if I do nothing else for that woman, except she's had a good night's sleep, that transforms the next day and the day after, because the knock-on effect of just something as simple as sleeping is massive. Because how can you go to court when you haven't slept? How can you see your kids when you're on edge? How can you, like, the basics? If you aren't eating, you aren't sleeping, you aren't exercising, you aren't nourishing yourself by looking after yourself, your kids don't have a hope, because you have to start with you. Because
right.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, all I was just literally going to say was, we can only control so much in this situation. And what I really want to do is to try and empower parents to see the part that they can control is them and themselves and their own health and their own mental health as much as their physical health. And I always say it's simple, but it's not easy. Because when you're living in the eye of the storm, it is very, very hard to do the simple things. Because you can't think straight. And food, for one, suddenly seems like, I can't be bothered cooking. It's a microwave dinner. It's a bag of chips. It's, I can't even bother making toast. Where something as simple as putting in the effort because you deserve to nourish your body. It seems like such a basic thing, but it's so important that you start with the basics. You start with nourishing meals. You start with sleep. Exercise to get the stress out, which is where doing the quantum flow comes in, because you're literally releasing it from your body and literally giving your your body and your mind a chance. And one of the other things that I do, and it's a coping mechanism that I'm teaching anyone who works with me, is how to breathe. Like, that's literally how basic I go with the parents, because we all shallow breathe. So we all just use 20% of our breath when we're stressed and we're in survival mode. And it sounds so simple, but nobody, I do it with the kids as well, because especially the kids at Autism and stuff, a lot of them in schools would have, like fidget toys and different things. But a teacher can take a fidget toy away from you if you're distracting another child. Where your breath, no one can take from you. If you're in a courtroom and you're stressed and you have a couple of simple breathing techniques, no one can take that from you. And it's the most basic survival technique and anxiety medicine nearly, is literally teaching somebody how to breathe again. And it's awful to think that parents are so damaged they've forgotten how to breathe. Like, they're literally so stressed all the time, literally going, oh my god. And when they talk to you, they can't even finish a sentence, some parents, because like, I can't get the air out, I can't even tell you the story. And they're telling you everything because it's so overwhelming, and they just want to get it out and then just go, this is what I'm dealing with. And you literally just feel the weight sometimes just coming off, having somebody to talk to, because obviously speaking to a therapist or a counselor, you can tell them the things that you can't tell anyone else, and in camera real. So you're the one person that they can go, this is how bad things are right now. What can you do? And obviously I can't turn around and go, because it's funny, because when you do the list for RTT, one of the questions when you fill in the form is, if I had a magic wand, what would you like me to do? But I always have to say to the parents, I can't give you your children back, because that would obviously be all of their wishes if I had a magic wand. But obviously that's not possible. But what we can do is we can fix the bits of you that are impacting your day, and there's a ripple effect. So when you rock up to your child or your solicitor or your courtroom or your whatever, and you are literally knowing your worth, that's a massive step forward. Because even for your ex, for them to turn around and go, hold on a minute, the last time we were here, you were crying in the corner, you were screaming at me because you were angry, you were calling me names, you were making a show of me, and I had all the power. When you suddenly shift the power balance back, they're like, whoa, wasn't expecting that. There's a plot twist for you, or a curveball, or a whatever, because they're not they don't know how to deal with you when you are suddenly ready to face them head on.
It's so good that you're doing this and going to the root cause and getting that woman to sleep the whole night. That's a big thing. People don't realize that depression and anxiety go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And then you're going through family court that no one understands, unless they're going in there with you and watching this, because I had friends come out horrified and my parents were horrified, and there was nothing they could do to help me.
Yeah.
And my sleep was disturbed, and you're having nightmares. Do parents bring that up as well, that they're having a lot of nightmares?
Absolutely. Nightmares come up. And it's nearly like, when you're kind of having a nightmare and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, this isn't real. But then so often half of what their nightmare is their reality. So there's also the element of, oh my God, this is nearly as bad as it gets. So there is the nightmare element, but there is also the replaying of everything in their minds, that they can't sleep because they can't switch their mind off. Because they're already thinking of, the next court date, the next access point, the next, what is my child doing right now? Because so many of those parents aren't even allowed to know if their child is sick. With lockdown, they're not even seeing their children, because COVID has been used as a massive excuse for people not to see them. One person I was speaking to was saying, they're turned up for their access and what have you, and it was like the child was afraid they'd catch love. They're not going to catch COVID, but you might catch love, you might get a hug, you might feel better about yourself. But they're so ingrained. Oh no, daddy could have germs, mommy could have germs, mommy could be bringing, she's not in our bubble. you know, and there's that whole fear, you know, oh no, COVID, you could have been X, Y, and Z, you work. And it's been totally manipulated to build an even bigger wedge between parents and children. And it literally plays all over. I'm sure not just Ireland, I'm sure over there and everywhere else in between. There are people that are using it to their advantage. They are manipulating the system. They are also the side of it. And I don't know if it's the same over with you, but the court system is now months and months and months behind because of COVID. So people have got so many adjournments. People are saying, you know, the court's time is so much more limited. And over here in Dublin, we have family courts, but I think for the rest of the country, it's more kind of circuit courts and criminal courts that are handling a lot of the family law cases from the parents I've been speaking to. So they're like, oh, sorry, that's not really an emergency that you haven't seen your child over there because this lady over here ran through a stoplight. So I have to go and deal with that now. Or, you know, so-and-so, you know, broke into a house. So, you know, we only have so many days to prosecute them. So that's more important than your child that's sitting at home being emotionally and psychologically abused. Sorry about that. Come back in a few years and they'll probably be in this court as a perpetrator. Because I remember speaking to a guard only recently. And they said, and I'm not saying this to scare any parent, it shocked me when he said it. He said, children who grow up as children of addicts, was what I was speaking to them about, or in homes where they've experienced trauma. I think something he said, now this is from him, this is from a guard, retired sergeant. He said they are 50 times more likely. There's 50% higher chance of them becoming abusers, addicts, and keeping the cycle going. And that just terrified me from my own personal situation. And I was sitting there and I'm going, I can't allow that to happen. Mm-hmm. I can't possibly to my kids. And like, I will do whatever. And I'm thinking, and then I translate that to the parents I'm working with, and I'm thinking, how would I feel if I wasn't in the position to make sure that didn't happen? And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, how horrific to know that the one thing that you can do for your child to protect them, you can't even do. And I was speaking to somebody the other day in relation to COVID and the facts now. I don't know, over there, our schools are closed at the moment. So there's no outlet for children who are in abusive situations. No outlet for any child, really. There's nobody checking on them. And I was saying to, actually to my mum, who's a school secretary, I was like, who actually looks after the children? Like, who is checking up? If you have a concern about a child now, who can look out for them? And she was like, well, there's nobody really. She said, all you have is that the other parent can make the call to child protection, or, you know, they can call the guard, they can do whatever, they can report it to the courts or to their solicitors. And I was like, but the courts aren't working fully at the moment, and the guards don't get involved if it's a family issue, and psychological and emotional abuse, they say it's too hard to prove. So literally there are hundreds of children in homes all over the country right now that nobody is looking out for. Because I remember years ago, my mom, because she works in a school, she used to say, Aoife, you have to make sure your kids go in looking clean uniforms, proper lunch boxes. She said, teachers watch everything. And she had me so paranoid. And like, if you knew me at all, I'm like organized chaos kind of lady here, you know, like if all my kids make it to school, we're doing well. Never mind whether or not they're clean half the time, you know, because it's chaos in our house. But the fear is always there. And I'm like, oh my God, if nobody is at least looking, but at least then when you know when they're going in, somebody is looking out for them. There is a teacher going, okay, Mary hasn't had her lunch 3 times this week, or she's a lot quieter. That there's somebody at least observing your child. And I know, and from the work I've done, is that often kids who are in abusive homes or victims of abuse thrive in school because it's their outlet. Mm-hmm. So often that's another way of spotting it. But again, teachers and professions aren't trained to spot that. Like, I know that from my own experience, but it's not something that's instantly taught to a lot of people that they got, and it should be.
because I was always told that when there's discord and you're going through family court and these judges are talking to these kids, their grades usually drop.
Mm.
But then I read somewhere that their grades soar when they're stressed out.
Because it's a distraction.
Right. And because that's what mine were doing. It's like their grades are soaring and they were coming up with stomach ulcers.
Yeah.
And it was just also migraines. Yes, that too, as well as
Yes.
myself. And I remember getting a call from the school, and the office lady said, what's going on? Because your kids aren't smiling anymore.
Oh, bless.
You know? And I said, well, this is what's going on. But when you're a non-custodial parent dealing with a school district, then you are a second-class citizen.
Yeah.
And what do you do? Luckily, mine were older, like they were like 15, 16, and they're aged out now. So it's over as far as, their schooling. So I'm kind of grateful for that. But I have two
At least you were
children.
lucky that you had a lovely teacher that noticed that your child had stopped smiling.
Right. But there was nothing they could do as well. And, as far as, people ask me, I mean, I have two alienated children. I have two kids that hate me.
Oh, no.
And it's caused by brainwashing, the Stockholm syndrome. And I had someone tell me, well, parental alienation is just junk science.
Oh.
And I'm going, well, have you been through family court? It's like,
have you lived with it? Because come back
yes.
to me when you've lived with it and then tell me how unreal it is.
Right. And I found it extremely hurtful. And do you have parents come to you and say, someone says this doesn't exist, and they're very, it's very hurtful.
Of course it is. That's another version of trauma. That in itself is more trauma into the body, because it is when somebody doubts, because then they're going, they don't believe me. They believe the version of, I'm an evil man or an evil woman. I'm a horrible parent. I have done this, this, and this to my children. And they would rather believe this than the fact that there's a possibility that parent alienation exists. Like, how could somebody, and how often is it that it's somebody that you knew and that knew you before that will suddenly go, oh, that's not possible. That's so ridiculous. And you're like, you knew me for years. You saw me at the school gate. We went to each other's kids' birthday parties. Come on, you know better than this. And yet people are so quick to go, no smoke without fire. Couldn't possibly be true. Because it's easier than thinking that actually, do you know what? There could be something else going on here. And that they might actually have a point, and that they might actually be the victim of the most horrific abuse of both a spouse and a child.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that Stockholm syndrome that you're talking about, that brainwashing, that coercive control of the child, that keeps me up at night. I'm not going to lie, it does, because there are so many children in homes who don't even know what's going on at the moment, and the reality of that will hit them at some point in their lives, and they are going to crash down like a ton of bricks. And this is why I put so much emphasis on building up the parents, because they are going to need to be there to catch them, and they are going to need to be so strong. And one parent, I remember saying to me, she's like, how do I put away my hurt when I'm around the children? Because she's like, the things they have said to me are awful. They have sworn at me. They've ripped up my presents. They have called me names. They have lied in a courtroom because they have been fed with these things that I had hit them and hurt them, and I had done this. I've never laid a hand on them. I've never done anything. However, the other partner has. But they are more scared of the partner who has than the partner who hasn't. And therefore, they're willing to, because obviously the partner who has done all the hurting and the abuse, they have the child. So the child has no escape. So they are literally stuck. They cannot speak to anybody because the people that they're allowed to see are controlled. They are literally micromanaged to within an inch of their lives. They cannot breathe. Their voices aren't heard by anyone. And I think this is the thing about parent alienation that I really, really hope gets out there, is that children and parents' voices are totally removed. They are not allowed to feel their feelings. They are not allowed to feel their emotions, and they are gagged. They're gagged by the courts. They're gagged by professionals. They're gagged by the ex-partners. They're gagged by the abusers. They are gagged by some even media outlets. It is horrific. And at some point in the future, people are going to look back and they think, how in the name of God was this allowed to happen? And I hope that because of the likes of the work you do, the likes of people like me, that people will learn and be educated that this is going on behind closed doors, where it's not spoken about. And it's awful because the other parent who has, you know, the abuser, the alienator, they are seen as like the martyr. Because they're like, oh, so-and-so was abusive. So-and-so did X, Y, and Z. And look, I'm here on my own over the kids. He never sees them. She never sees them. I'm doing everything on my own. And there's this whole thing of like, look at me. Aren't I wonderful?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't I fabulous? And everyone is buying into that.
Oh, yes.
And you're like, oh my God. You can't wait for the penny to drop with everyone around them. And they're like, but obviously not in all cases does the penny drop until it's an awful lot later. And in some cases, and I know you've touched on it with other podcasts, the high rate of suicide in relation to parent alienation, because your children become your reason to live. Mm-hmm. You know that as a mom. They become your reason to wake up in the morning. And when somebody takes that away and gives you no hope, you can see how people can spiral very fast, very low. When literally every time they go to a door, it's slammed in their face. When they're told, they're sworn at, they're abused by their ex-partner for a long time, in many cases before they left. So they were leaving abused. And it's very hard to rebuild yourself as a victim of abuse. It is very hard to ever trust again. And even for people to come to someone like me, it takes an awful lot to pick up the phone or to text and say, I need help. And that for somebody could be that little word of I need help. Literally just saying that, help me, takes so much energy and so much strength that some people are never get to the point where they're able to say it. They're just so lost in their own minds and their own trauma and their own stress that even to reach out and say, please, I'm drowning here. And their own families can't see it. It's awful.
Right. I mean, because even my parents didn't realize what happened when the first one left. And then I won't go into it, but people don't understand. Right. Yeah. I mean, people don't understand what this is. And we've got the DSM-5 V995.51 written by Dr. Craig Childress, that it's emotional psychological child abuse.
Yeah.
And the judges ignore it. It's just an ignored topic. And
that's the worst part.
Right. And it's like, what do you do? What do you do? It's, you know, with psychologists speaking on these podcasts to educate the public on this, it's just, we need more of it. So
absolutely. And we need the judges and the solicitors and the professionals who are sitting in these rooms watching these kids, even the teachers, like teachers in schools, they're the first point of contact for a lot of kids. Mm-hmm. Do you know that if they were educated, like if the educators were educated, and I know this sounds awful, but I spoke to a parent about it before. If we educated teenagers before they went out into the world of relationships and built teenagers up to know you do not need a man, a woman, a relationship to validate who you are, and kind of taught them about the value of self-esteem and self-belief before they went out in the world, mm-hmm. I think that would be massive as well. And that they were educated into the fact that there are narcissists, there is parent alienation, there is bad people out there, that they knew. They don't go out into the world blind going, oh my God, and get, sucked in. I think empowering children, I think, is part of the education process that needs to happen. That they know before they go out there.
I agree. I think there should be like mini psychology classes starting in the middle schools and throughout the high schools, talking about borderline personality disorders,
Mm-hmm.
bipolar, and even
Yes.
narcissism, because you've got high functioning bipolar and even people that can actually wreak havoc in your life later. And
Yes.
if these kids knew, had I known the signs, I would not have married him. I mean,
I know.
there were plenty of red flags. I was just naive.
But that's it. And that's the thing. If you could get rid of some of that naivety for the next generation, that will be massive. Because,
Yes.
that whole thing of if I knew then what I know now, all
Right.
the things you would do differently, and we'd
Definitely.
all do that. Like, God, many
Oh,
things I would love to have known when I was 16. Like, we teach them
definitely.
sex education, but we don't teach them relationship education.
And that's just as important.
Mm.
They need to know. And I also found, I guess you've been blogging. It's called Broken Loving Parents Forgotten. I read
Yeah.
that. That was beautifully written.
Thank
And
you.
you also wrote an article on stress relieving strategies as well. And
Yes.
that's great. It's just good to have all this to look at and learn from. And I was going to ask you, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I suppose from the stress relieving, because obviously there's a lot of parents out there who may not be ready yet to pick up the phone and ask for help from somebody. So if they find, really go back to basics. Okay. Work on their sleep, work on their food, get out and some form of exercise, any form of exercise that relieves stress, and to do
Mm-hmm.
one nice thing for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
One nice thing today. It doesn't matter what it is, something that they enjoy to do. Could be reading, could be going to see a movie, could be catching up with a friend on the phone. And the other last thing that I would say to any parent is to have one person that they can call.
Mm-hmm.
One person when they're feeling low and they're feeling down. Somebody who will answer the phone without judgment, without criticism, and just let them talk. I think everybody needs to have one person. It doesn't have to be a family member, could be a friend, could be the Samaritans, could be, anybody, but just that you have one number that when you are at your lowest, you will pick up the phone and call them and know that they will support you without judgment, without criticism. There's no point in having that sister or that brother or that parent who, when they ring, they're going to lecture you and go, well, you should have done this and you should have done that and you should have. They're no use when you're feeling down. You need somebody who is literally just going to, because obviously we can't all hug at the moment, but literally give you a virtual hug. Somebody that will turn around and go, it's okay, I'm here, I've got you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think everybody needs somebody that will do that for them. And I hope that any parent who's out there and listening to this will know that they are not alone. Parent alienation does exist. They are not the only one, and that there is help, there is support, and there is some element of hope for them.
Mm-hmm. And I thank you for listing coping skills, because a lot of people come out of the courtroom and they just go home and sleep, you know? And I'm glad you mentioned all of those. And I'd like to have you back on Slam the Gavel.
Oh,
In
wow,
the
yes, anytime.
Okay, great. Okay, Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Were Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. And please join us again in the future for another episode, again with Aoife. And I appreciate you coming on the show. I totally appreciate everything you said.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. It's great to talk to you.
Definitely. Thank you so much.